Hello, and thank you for joining me for this overview of Indicator 7 in the Child Outcome Summary process. This is webinar 3 in the Connecting the Dots series. This webinar will provide you with an overview of the Indicator 7 entry data collection using the Child Outcome Summary process and how the DEC Recommended Practices connect to Indicator 7. My name is Ladrika Jones. Again, welcome. We'll go ahead and move forward as you continue to put your name and role in the chat box. All right, the first question is in this webinar is, what do you want to get out of this webinar? You can use the link in the chat box or use the QR code to answer the question. Again, the question is, what do you want to get out of this webinar? As you answer this question, it will go to a Mentimeter and we will look at the results. So we'll give a few minutes for you to answer. What do you want to get out of this webinar? Good, I see some answers populating. To increase knowledge of Indicator 7, we will definitely be doing that this afternoon. Better understanding of how to meet the outcomes for Indicator 7. Thank you, it's another good response.
Ladrika, we have some in the chat as well. One is a deeper understanding and one is data report criteria.
Very good. Okay, so you all can keep populating, keep putting information in, and we'll try to get back to this later on in the presentation to see what you get out of the webinar, what you want to get out of the webinar. Okay, all right. Today's agenda. This is the agenda for today. We're going to talk about the background on Indicator 7, outcomes, the 3 child outcome summary, and the DEC recommended practices. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat box and our team will address what we can during the presentation. We may have to get back with you afterwards if your question is specific to your situation, or if we feel like we need to check in with our Office of Special Education 619 representative. But please be sure we will do everything we can to answer all of your questions. Several studies have shown that early intervention in early childhood special education for children aged birth to 5 has significant benefits, which include cognitive, language, motor, social, emotional, and benefits for the child's family as well. The work that you do as an educator is so important. If you haven't heard it lately, the children and families you work for appreciate you and they need you. Thank you for all you do to support them. All right, so let's talk about Indicator 7. Here's some background information. Each year, states are required to report data on 17 different indicators of performance or compliance in special education to the Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP. Each state sets their own targets for performance indicators, including Indicator 7. The targets for Indicator 7 were set based on data and feedback from our statewide stakeholders. As part of the annual reporting to OSEP, there's another acronym, OSIS, which is the Office of Special Education Services, also publicly reports statewide and district level data. State level data can be found on the South Carolina Department of Education website. I will be sharing some information from the South Carolina Department of Education website as it pertains to this information. There's also the IDEA, which is the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, requires each state to develop a state performance plan, also known as a SPP, and also an annual performance report, known as the APR. This report evaluates the state's efforts to implement the requirements and purposes of the IDEA and describes how the states will improve its special education implementation. The SPP APR include indicators that measure child and family outcomes and other indicators. Child outcomes is SPP and APR indicator 3 for Part C and indicator 7 for Part B 619. So for today's purposes, we are focusing on Part B, which is indicative for children ages 3 to 5 who does not have an IEP or IFSP. That's a lot of acronyms, but I promise it's going to make sense as we go through today, okay? Annually, the state of South Carolina submits to the federal government a state performance plan, an SPP. So we've already talked about that. So just remember that. And also indicator 7 measures the social emotional progress of children, knowledge and skills that children achieve over time, and their adaptable functional ability. So in summary, there are 3 preschool outcomes within indicator 7. Okay, so here's the information that I just talked about. Indicator 7 is the percentage of preschool children aged 3 to 5 with IEPs who demonstrate improved A, positive social emotional skills, B, acquisition and use of skills and knowledge, which includes early language, communication, and early literacy. And it also use of appropriate behaviors to meet their needs. So what is an outcome? The requirement for data on child outcomes is part of a major shift in accountability for public programs. For many years, public programs, including early intervention and preschool special education, reported data to funders and taxpayers on things like how many children receive services or how many hours they received. This data was important, but they didn't show whether programs were making a difference. For that, we needed outcomes data. Think of an outcome as an end result. For early intervention and preschool special education, an outcome would be how a child or family is doing at the beginning, during, and at the end of participation in a program. Because children continually acquire new skills, they experience a series of outcomes over time. An outcome is not the number or type of service children receive, but is what children can do after receiving that service. No one had ever articulated what outcomes early intervention and preschool special education were trying to achieve. So stakeholders were convened and they developed it. So there are 3 child outcomes measured by early intervention and early childhood special education systems. They encompass functional skills and behaviors that are meaningful for a child's participation in everyday routines. They cut across developmental domains to represent the integrated nature of how children develop, learn, and thrive. The breadth of these outcomes provides a framework for describing and consistently measuring children's functional skills and behaviors across settings and situations. The next few slides will give specific outcomes that can be evaluated upon entering preschool and exiting preschool into kindergarten. The progress noted determines if indicator 7 has been met. So let's look at the first outcome. Outcome 1 is positive social emotional skills. This includes social relationships. The first one, relating with caregivers, demonstrate regulation and attachment. Children should be able to respond, initiate, sustain interactions, acknowledge comings and goings. For number 2, attending, children should be able to attend to people in a variety of settings, express awareness, caution, respond to, offer greetings, respond to their own names and other people's names as well. The third one is interacting with peers. Children should be able to convey awareness, respond, initiate, sustain interactions, share, cope, resolve conflicts, and play near and with peers. The next one is participating in social games and communicating with others. Children should be able to respond to and initiate and sustain playing games and going back and forth with conversation. This includes joint attention, engaging in mutual activities, and following the rules of a game. And the last one for outcome 1 is expressing own emotions and responding to the emotions of others. Children should be able to show pride, excitement, frustration, manage their own emotions, and display affection and comfort others. Know that was a lot of information, so now we have a little knowledge check here. What does attending mean as it relates to outcome 1 for indicator 7? Please read the knowledge check, answer the question. Once you have determined an answer, please place your answer in the chat box. I'll give a few seconds for that. Okay, I see some responses rolling in. Again, that question is, what does attending mean as it relates to outcome 1 for indicator 7? Does it mean A, relating with caregivers, B, interacting with peers, C, attending to other people, or D, following social norms? And I see for the most part, everyone has it correct. The correct answer is C, attending to other people. All right, so on to outcome 2, the acquisition and use of knowledge of skills. The first one here is showing interest in learning. Children should be able to persist and show eagerness and awareness, imitate and repeat actions, and explore their environment. The next one is using problem solving, figuring things out, use trial and error, remember steps and actions, and execute them with intention, and experiment with new and known actions. The next one is engaging in purposeful play. Children should show early awareness and exploration, use objects according to function, play by building and pretending and organizing and expanding play scenarios and roles. The fourth one is understanding pre-academic and literacy. Children should notice differences or associate among things and demonstrate matching, sorting, labeling by size, color, shape, numbers, and even function. Children should interact with books and pictures and practice those early writing and reading skills. The fifth one is acquiring language to communicate. Learn and use sounds, words, and sentences with increasing complexity, including sign language and augmentative and alternative communication if needed. The sixth one is understanding questions asked and directions given. Children should be able to respond to gestures, verbal requests, understand the meaning of increasingly complex words, questions, directions, and state details about themselves, such as their name and their age. All right, so let's use the chat box again. In the chat box, give an example of how you will identify the acquisition of knowledge and skills. Give an example of how you would identify the acquisition of knowledge and skills. Just one example. Yes, Tanya says attending to other people. Very good. That's a good response. A child recreating an activity that has been modeled in their daily routine, playing a game. Those are really good responses, and those you're absolutely correct. That is an example of how you will identify the acquisition of knowledge and skills. Okay, so outcome 3 is the use of appropriate behaviors to meet needs. So the first one here is moving around and manipulating things to meet needs. Children need to be able to move with increasing control and purpose. For example, reaching, rolling, crawling, walking, running, climbing, to navigate the environment with accommodations as needed. They should be able to manipulate objects, tools such as crayons and scissors and switches with increasing control. The next one is eating and drinking with increasing independence. Students should be able to suck, swallow, chew, bite, finger feed, use utensils, hold their bottle, drink from a cup, all of those things that shows growing independence with eating and feeding themselves. The third one is dressing and undressing with increasing independence. Children should be able to assist with dressing, taking off, putting on clothes and shoes, undoing fasteners, those kinds of things. The fourth one is diapering, toileting, and washing with increasing independence. Lifting legs for diaper change, sitting on the potty, washing hands, brushing teeth, helping with bathing, all of those are great examples of that. The fifth one is communicating needs. Children should be able to indicate their hunger, their need for sleep, a diaper change, expressing discomfort or hurt, or requesting or rejecting food, those kinds of things. The sixth one is showing safety awareness. Children should be able to know how to avoid danger, such as putting things in their mouth that should not be there, touching a hot stove, following safety rules across settings and situations. A nice visual of all of this information was created by the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, better known as ECTA. A link will be placed in the chat box and included in the post-seminar follow-up email. All right, so that link will be placed in the chat box. And like I said, you will be able to access it in the post-seminar follow-up email. So now I have a challenge question for you. How would you explain the 3 child outcomes to a child, the child's family member or a parent of a child in your program? We have another Mentimeter here. So the Mentimeter link will be placed in the chat box, or you can use the QR code on this slide to answer the question. Again, the question is, how would you explain the 3 child outcomes to a parent or family member and a child in your program? We'll wait a few minutes for some responses. And thank you, Dana, for putting those links in the chat box. Oh, that's a good one. You explain it to a family or parent of a child that children needs to be successful. That's very good. We'll give another minute or two. Some people might be thinking or typing. Okay. Looking at how your child interacts with others compared to others the same age. It's another good one. And skills that are important for a child's participation in everyday routines and activities. Thank you so much for participating in this Menti with me. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move right along. The child outcomes summary summarizes information on a child's functioning in each of the 3 child outcome areas using a 7-point scale. With the child outcome summary process, a team of individuals who are familiar with the child, including parents, can consider multiple sources of information about his or her functioning, including parent-provider observation and results from direct assessment. The Child Outcome Summary is a tool used for recording progress for children in your program. The Child Outcome Summary form is not an assessment instrument. It is a document used for summarizing across multiple points of information about the child. The COS is done at entry into preschool and exit into kindergarten for Part B 619. Please note that the Part C service provider is mandated to complete the Child Outcome Summary process for each child they serve who qualify. As a school district, you can use that Part C exit score as your entry score. Part C providers should automatically send this information to districts. However, districts can request it. So this is the Child Outcome Summary form, also known as a COSIF. You can raise your hand in the chat box if you've seen this icon before, if you'd like to do that. But otherwise, this is a screenshot of outcome 1 of the Child Outcomes form. There needs to be multiple sources completing this form, such as a teacher or early interventionist. You will be given a link to access this file later in the presentation. Again, this is just a screenshot of the form. As you see here, we have number 1, the positive social emotional skills. We've already talked about that. That's the first outcome. So each of the outcomes will be on this form, all 3 of them, and you just complete this form. Okay, so the Child Outcome Summary process. So what is it? It's a team process for reviewing child assessment data from different sources, culminating in the rating of a child's functioning on a scale of 1 to 7. The Child Outcome process allows early intervention and early childhood special education programs to create information or synthesize information about children across different assessment tools to produce data that could be summarized across programs in the state, as well as across all of the states for the national picture. So why was this process developed? It's for federal reporting on child outcomes. No method to synthesize child outcomes data from multiple sources, and different programs would be using different assessment instruments, and outcome data would be different across programs. So that's why the Child Outcome Summary process was created. There is a link for the overview of child outcome forms. To click on it here. This is what it looks like, the Child Outcome Summary process. This is the 7-point scale. You will have access to this so you can see 1 through 7, that scale that is used. Okay. All right, let's move on to summary ratings resources. And these are different resources that's going to help you in determining indicator 7. This is a lot of information, but this slide really will help you with everything. The first link here is that Child Outcome Summary form. It's the form I just showed you a little while ago. This is used by the team for assessment data collection. You can use that first QR code to access that form. The next QR code is for the decision tree for ratings. You can use this decision tree to determine the rating of a child. That rating is that form I just showed you that just pulled up with the 1 through 7. And then that third link here, that QR code, is a helpful tool to determine the Office of Education, Special Education category, the OES category. It's a calculator, and we'll go through that in the next couple of slides. It's going to pull together and make sense. So the difference between the entry and exit score is calculated, and the child is placed into one of 5 categories. So you will have the categories. It will be a percentage of children who either A, did not improve functioning, B, improved functioning, but not sufficient to move nearer to functioning comparable to same age peers. C, the child might have improved the functioning to a level nearer to same age peers, but did not reach it. D is the child may have improved functioning to reach a level comparable to same age peers. Or E, the child may have maintained functioning at a level comparable to same age peers. For each of these outcome areas, districts are required to report the types of progress children make in their early childhood special education program. The Office of Special Education Programs has created 5 categories to reflect the different types of progress that children can make. And that's this range between the A and E. As you can imagine, reporting the percentage of children in each of the 5 progress categories for 3 different outcome areas generates a lot of numbers. I will explain this process further in the next 2 slides. But as you see here, there are 2 summary statements. Summary statement 1 is a percentage of those children who entered the program below age expectations in each outcome, the percentage who substantially increased their rate of growth by the time they exited the program, and the result for summary statement 1 is calculated using this algebraic formula here that you see. And there's an algebraic formula for summary statement 2 as well. These formulas show how to obtain the percentage data from the summary statements. However, you can use these formulas if you like, or you can use the calculator that I showed you in the previous slide to determine your percentage. Again, the calculator is in the chat box, so that would be very helpful for you. Thank you, Dana, for putting that in there. In summary, out of everything I've just went through, this is the summary statement. This is everything that has to happen to make sure that you're meeting indicator 7. Step 1 is gather information from all sources, including part C, their exit rating, and add it to that COSEF form, that child outcome summary form. Step 2 is to determine rating using that decision tree. Again, that link is in the chat box. In step 3, you can determine your progress category using the calculator. OSEP will determine the summary rating. This is how they calculate if the indicator has been met. Please remember, steps 1 and 2 occur during the entry, and steps 1 through 4 occur during the exit. So you might be wondering, how do all of these things I've discussed go together? So let's connect the dots. Use of the DEC recommended practices facilitates high quality service delivery. When writing the SPP APR, states create a vision and plan for achieving the best possible outcomes for children eligible for IDEA services. Therefore, by providing high quality service delivery, children are more likely to be successful, which results in districts meeting or exceeding their early childhood indicators in their SPP APR reports. By incorporating these DEC recommended practices in your program or classrooms, you can positively impact early childhood outcomes associated with indicator 7. So let's look at the DEC recommended practices. This slide shows the DEC recommended practice for interaction, as it relates to indicator 7. Sensitive and responsive interactional practices are the foundation for promoting the development of a child's language and cognitive and emotional competence. These interactional practices are the basis for fostering all children's learning. For children who have or are at risk for developmental delays or disabilities, they represent a critical set of strategies for fostering children's social emotional competence, communication, cognitive development, problem solving, autonomy, and persistence. So let's connect the dots. The slide we reviewed early in the presentation, which was positive social emotional skills, directly relate to this DEC recommended practice, which is interaction. This slide shows the DEC recommended practice for leadership as it pertains to indicator 7. The work of practitioners on the front line is critical to improving outcomes for young children who have or are at risk for developmental delays and disabilities in their families. But practitioners do not work in a vacuum. Their ability to implement the DEC recommended practices can be supported or constrained by the program, school, agency, or the organization for which they work. Leaders in early intervention and early childhood special education can be program directors and other administrators, practitioners, family members, students, higher education faculty, and others. Leaders have a professional responsibility to use all the mechanisms within their control to create the conditions needed to support practitioners in implementing the following recommended practices. So let's connect the dots. DEC recommended practice, leadership. We collaborate with early childhood professionals in completing the COSIF, the Child Outcome Summary Form. By doing this, you are monitoring improved child outcomes. The next one, DEC recommended practice for assessment as it relates to indicator 7. So let's connect the dots. Assessment is a part of the child outcome summary process. By gathering information on a regular basis, the child outcome summary data will make it easier to determine a more accurate rating. As I mentioned before, states are required to set annual targets for indicator 7 for a 6-year period. Targets are numerical goals related to progress on each summary statement. States must annually measure performance compared to their targets. The targets for indicator 7 were set based on data and feedback from our statewide stakeholders as part of the annual reporting to OSEP. Districts also publicly report statewide and district level data. State level data can be found on the South Carolina Department of Education website. The information that you see on this slide is the target and state performance for South Carolina for 2020-2021. So as you can see, you see the outcome A, positive social emotional skills. Remember we talked about outcome B, acquisition and use of knowledge and skills. And we also talked about outcome C, the use of appropriate behaviors to meet their needs. Please note that you have A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, and C2. That relates back to those summary statements. Remember those summary statement A or summary statement 1 and 2. So that's what those are. You have here your target. Let's say for outcome A, for summary statement A1, your target was 86.45%. Your state performance was 85.94, and we did not meet that target. So this chart shows what South Carolina, this is the data that was pulled from the child outcome summary. All right. Are there any questions at this point? Okay. Well, but the presentation did not take as long, so you have some time back in your day. We have an evaluation. The link will be placed in the chat box. And if you have any questions, you can contact our TA team. Our information is on the screen. And I want to thank you for attending today's Connecting the Dots session. Our next session will be on March 29th, where we will look at indicator 12, which is the early childhood transitions. And we hope you join that. We hope that you join us for that session as well.
Ladrika, we do have a question, and I'm not sure that we can answer it right this second, but Tanya wants to know how long this data has been collected.
I might have to get back with you on that. The states have always collected data, but it wasn't as specific as it is now with the child outcome. But I will have to get that information to get back with you. Are there any other questions? All right, do not forget the evaluation link, which is in the chat box. Here's some information here to stay connected with Skippy, your South Carolina Partnerships for Inclusion team. You can stay connected with us. You can find us on social media. You can contact us through our email address, or you can scan the QR code to subscribe to our newsletter. Again, thank you all for attending, and please do not forget to fill out the evaluation link, which is in the chat box. And once you've done those things, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. Thank you so much.